Wow, that was the best shooting star I ever saw. Meteor showers are so cool.
I wonder where they come from. It's so weird to think that the sky goes on forever and ever.
I wonder about the moon and if there's life on other planets. Mostly, I just want to visit them.
Do you think aliens ever land on the moon?
Probably.
Well, my Uncle Sigmund told me about when the astronauts went to the moon. It was made of rock.
I'd love to go there. Or to Mars.
We should cover it in our next broadcast. Do you think Hawking and Dylan will go for it? Dylan will, but Hawking's weird about some stuff. Hey, we'll just have to make them. They're just boys.
It's a go then. To the moon it is.
Upstairs in the attic. You can go on up.
Thanks, Mrs. Jetson.
What's the password?
Chuck Yeager.
What do you fly?
X-15. Test flights. Best there ever was.
Come on in. I'm glad you could make it today. Is this all of them, Haley?
Yeah, 2 years of collecting NASA video.
Great. That should be plenty for the broadcast.
Oh, yeah, I got the fuse, too.
Oh, cool. Let's put these down. I really want to see that.
Ta-da!
Wow.
Be careful, Cleo. Buying this particular fuse wasn't easy.
Will it work?
Of course it'll work. They don't call me Haley for nothing.
Good. We need all the power we can get.
John Glenn, Mercury 6. Best there ever was. Careful with the goods, Cleo. You realize this whole idea is foolish.
It'll work. You've just got to believe.
But an intergalactic audience? The good aliens of Alpha Centauri? What kind of ratings can we ever get with that?
We've got the makings of great television. A classic plot. Real-life adventure. It could be a mini-series. Humans go to the moon for the first time. But we've got an angle. A plot. Larger-than-life characters.
We're just kids. This is just an attic. And we're just an underground TV station nobody cares about. Our signal doesn't even reach across town.
That's about to change. Today we beam our show to outer space. It'll travel at the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second.
186,282 to be precise. Which means our broadcast will hit the living rooms of the average Alpha Centaurian in...
Hey, Astrodudes!
Hi, everybody.
Dylan!
So much for the password.
Any of you guys know how astronauts keep clean in space?
Not more jokes.
They take meteor showers! Just a little Astrodudes humor. There's more where that came from.
That's what we're afraid of.
Okay, guys, serioso time. If Haley's calculations are correct, we only have a brief window of time for this broadcast transmission to work.
If it works at all, which is doubtful.
So what are we waiting for?
Final step for an Astrodude. The video schmidio is up and running.
We're beaming our broadcast to the nearest star, Alpha Centauri, and who knows where else. Dylan, grab the camera.
Check.
Newton, stay close to Uncle Sigmund's scrapbook.
Okay.
Haley, get your reporting waist ready, and Hawking, just try not to drool while we're broadcasting.
Come on. Stand by.
It's showtime.
Astrodudes Network.
Here we
we go. Good afternoon and welcome to WNDR-TV, the Astrodudes Network. You might have heard about our ancient explorers, Leif Erikson, Columbus, the Spanish, and the Portuguese. If you haven't, that's okay. But tonight, we're going to talk about the greatest voyage, and if I do say so myself, the coolest voyage of them all, the first Astrodudes and their journey to the moon.
True, Cleo. These guys are real heroes. We're talking about guys strapped into a small chair in a tiny metal cylinder with millions of pounds of rocket fuel going off beneath them, all designed to launch them into the great unknown. Wow! Cleo?
But before I could get to the moon, there was a lot to do. It started with rocket science in the 1920s and then really took off in 1958. Here's a report on the early years of the space program and the development of rocket science is WNDR-TV musical reporter Dylan.
Yay, Dylan!
Yo, Astrodudes. Well, I'm here to tell you that space is cool, but I'm sure you know that from your days at school. It was us and our Russians in a big debate when the whole thing started in 58. This is Space Rap. Yeah. It got started with a doctor named Goddard. We had troubles with the rocket Vanguard. It didn't work out, it was back to the lab. There was no slowing down, no time to be sad. This is Space Rap. Folks around the world wanted it to work. Space is where it's at, it's a brand new turf. It's a space race, put a man on the moon, sail onto Jupiter and even Neptune. Astrodudes, I'm rapping! There was a lot to be done, many missions we planned. Astronauts in training, working for Uncle Sam. But before a man can overfly around the globe, we have to test it and test it to make sure they get home. This is Space Rap. After years in planning and dreams realized, NASA was created and grew big inside. But our story's just beginning. Now it's back to you, Cleo, and to you, Hawkins. Let's get on with the show.
Well, you won't see that on the Today Show. Thank you very much, Dylan. And now here's Newton, our factomaniac and trivia specialist, with some fun facts to know and tell. Newton?
That's right, Cleo. I'm your window on the world. Do you know where sky ends and space begins? According to scientists, humans can still breathe as far as 40 miles up, even though it's really cold up there. And as long as you can breathe, you're not technically in space yet, or we couldn't breathe. But United States government officials decided that space actually begins 50 miles up. I don't know why.
They just decided it, okay?
Don't be so hard on her. She's just a kid.
Sorry.
A lot more had to happen before I could get to the moon than just making a rocket. First, we had to get rockets all the way into space, then get them to fly in a circle around the Earth, which is called orbiting. Just to be on the safe side, NASA and the Russians both sent plants into space first, but not all of them made it back. Then the Russians sent the first mammal into space, a dog named Laika. And how was the flight?
Rough, rough, very rough.
That's what you get for asking a dog a question. Although Laika successfully orbited the Earth in Sputnik 2, she never made it back either. So Laika was not only the first mammal in space, she was also the first mammal lost in space. Now, I for one like dogs, so I hope a lot of people feel sorry for Laika because she gave her life for us. Doggy.
NASA decided they'd send chimps up into space before humans. So, in 1959, they went to New Mexico and started Chimp College. They actually trained 40 chimpanzees to be our first astronauts. Out of all the graduates, one lucky chimp was picked for the first flight. His name was Ham.
0.
But unlike Laika, Ham made it back alive. Then, it was time to train humans to fly in space. But nobody was exactly sure what to expect. So the first astronauts were put through lots of different tests. Some of them were pretty weird. The Russians and the US weren't getting along real well at the time. Everybody was real competitive. Some Americans were pretty disappointed when Russian astronaut Yuri Gagarin became the first person to orbit the Earth in 1961. Hey! He was the first Astrodude. Both sides were real close. Just 3 weeks later, Alan Shepard became the first American in space. His flight in Mercury 3 lasted 15 minutes, and then he splashed down in the ocean, which is mostly where American spaceships landed for a long time.
So things were pretty tense then, and a lot was happening fast. Another 3 weeks went by, and all of a sudden, President Kennedy decides that it would be nice if humans made it to the moon by 1970, especially American humans. It was kind of like he dared everybody to do it. Here's a part of what he had to say.
Now it is time for this nation to take a clearly leading role in space achievement, which in many ways may hold the key to our future on Earth. I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
And there you have it. A little rocket science, a plant, a dog, a monkey, and a man. It was quite a ride.
We'll have more after this message from our sponsors.
Cut, we're clear, everybody.
We're doing great, Hawk, especially for your first try at co-anchoring.
Are you serious?
No.
So, any of you guys know what astronauts do when they run out of water?
No, what?
They drink from the Big Dipper. Wait, there's more. What's an astronaut's favorite game?
Okay, what's an astronaut's favorite game?
Monopoly.
Very funny. So anybody actually think the Alpha Centaurians will pick up our broadcast?
We'll be almost 4.5 years older before it even reaches our planet.
4.3 years older to be exact, assuming our signal travels at the speed of light.
Now there's a cool concept. Hey Centaurians, we're coming to you live, but we're not this age anymore because it takes 4.3 years for our signal to reach you. That is cool.
Oops, the commercial break's almost over. Dylan, did you finish your story on John Glenn?
Presto.
Places, everyone. Dylan, you can help out on camera, too. Quiet on the set. Stand by. Action.
Welcome back, and thanks to the official sponsor of our newscast, Space Studs, the finest in Velcro clothing for your next moon launch. The first American manned missions into space were all part of the Mercury program. NASA knew it needed a lot of energy to lift a space capsule into space, so they needed some pretty big rockets. For more information, let's go live to our science consultant, Dr. Barnaby Ba. Dr. Ba, what exactly was the goal of Project Mercury?
Well, NASA learned a lot from the Alan Shepard flight, you see that? But you know, now it was time to orbit the Earth. We must make the man go round and around and around without getting dizzy and not having the craft burn up on the re-entry into the atmosphere.
And what about re-entry, Dr. Ba? What about crashing when they return?
You very smart boy. Yes, just like my little genius assistant here, Rachel. Very, very smart. Yes. Yes.
Dr. Ba, die Lösung ist eh gleich MC Quadrat, nicht MC hoch 2. Wir haben Hausaufgabe wird, haben Sie Quantumphysik geschafft.
See? Very, very smart kid. Yeah. You see, we must come in at the right angle into the atmosphere here and splash into the ocean. Otherwise, you splat like a stink bug on the windshield of a car. This would not be good.
Obviously, Dr. Ba knows his stuff.
Now, some of you have heard of John Glenn, but do you really, really know just how incredible he was? This guy's a planetary hero. Here to tell us more is our Astrodude reporter, Dylan.
Thank you, Cleo. John Glenn was one of the original 7 astronauts trained by NASA and okayed for spaceflight. He was a trained military pilot who flew a lot of test flights, and now a lot of people were counting on him to be the first American to orbit the Earth. So on February 20th, 1962, John Glenn got into his space capsule. It was called the Friendship 7.
Godspeed, John Glenn. Roger, loud and clear. Flight path is good. All systems are go.
About 100 million Americans, which is a lot of people, watched it go up on their TV sets. Once he got into space, Glenn flew around the world 3 times. Then he splashed down in the Atlantic. Then everybody threw a big party called the Ticker Tape Parade in New York City. This is Dylan, reporting for WNDR-TV, the Astrodudes Network.
Thanks, Dylan. And now here's Newton, our factomaniac and trivia specialist, with some fun facts to know and tell. Newton?
Did you know that the Atlas rocket that pushed John Glenn's Friendship 7 capsule into space was 10 stories high? That's big. And did you know that it took Glenn 4 hours and 55 minutes to orbit the Earth 3 times? Back to you, Cleo.
After the success of the Mercury missions, it was time for a big step forward in the race to the moon, Project Gemini.
With us again is Dr. Barnaby Ba, a Gemini expert. Dr. Ba, would you mind explaining? Dr. Ba?
Hawkins, is that you in there? What's going on now, huh?
Project Gemini, sir. What exactly was the goal of Project
Are you
Gemini?
kids working on that news show again, eh?
Yes, sir. We're broadcasting to Alpha Centauri, the star nearest to the Earth. Other than the sun, of course.
I know this. I'm an expert for crying out loud. Now, come on, what is your question anyway?
Project Gemini. What were NASA's goals?
Oh, well, we had a lot of work to do, before going to the moon there. We needed longer missions and everything, We had to actually work on, say rendezvous and, dockings. That's when the ships actually come together. Had to work on all that stuff. We had to work on the re-entries, the soft landings, the orbitings, These men and women, they're very smart, but they have to work and learn and train with all this stuff. This space stuff is serious business. It's fantastic, but it's serious stuff now. We have work to do over here, for crying out loud. Come on.
Sie müssen unbedingt an Ihrem falschen deutschen Akzent arbeiten. Sie werden vielleicht Amerikaner einlegen können, aber die Franzosen werden Sie niemals an der Nase herumführen.
Thank you, Dr. Ba. Cleo?
There are a total of 10 manned Gemini missions, all with the goal of expanding what we knew about space. The moon is a long way away, so a lot of people...
237,463 miles at its closest, to be exact.
As I was saying, the moon is a long way away from the Earth, so a lot of careful planning had to be done. Each Gemini flight needed to have 2 astronauts on board instead of 1, because it took more people to do everything, and we are going to need 3 for the moon flights. Plus, NASA needed bigger rockets to launch the Gemini capsules. The first Gemini flight that had men on board was Gemini 3, and they were supposed to practice steering in space. Then came Gemini 4, my personal favorite. See, space is cool for a lot of reasons, one of which is that there's no gravity in space, so things just float around.
Gemini 4, Hawaii, Capcom.
And the guys on Gemini 4 were the first Astrodudes to actually walk in space.
Okay, I'm out. I feel like $1 million. This is the greatest experience. It's just tremendous.
Even though NASA called it a spacewalk, it was sort of more of a space float. A couple of flights later, Gemini 7 actually orbited the Earth 206 times. It took 2 weeks, which is about as long as it would take to get to the moon and back. The first perfect rendezvous and hookup of 2 spacecraft took place with Gemini 10. This was real important for the final step in getting to the moon.
Man, that's great.
And then, for the first time, Gemini 11 got far enough out into space,
853 miles out, to be exact.
Hawking. Anyway, they got far enough away from the Earth to take really great photographs of the entire planet. Even the early explorers and guys like Aristotle proved the world wasn't flat. Astronaut Pete Conrad was the first person to actually see the entire round Earth from space. Pretty awesome. In just 20 months from March 1965 to November 1966, the Gemini missions proved that humans should be able to go to the moon and that steering their spaceships wouldn't be a problem.
Here's our trivia specialist and factomaniac with a few thoughts about Project Gemini.
Did you know that astronaut John Young sneaked a corned beef sandwich onto Gemini 3 in a spacesuit? Yuck. Corned beef, yuck.
Thanks, Newton. And now this commercial message.
Cut, we're clear, everybody.
Okay. So why is being an astronaut such a strange job?
I don't know why.
Because you have to be fired before you can go to work. Okay, dudes, just one more. Where do astronauts park their spaceships?
We give up where?
In parking meteors. Get it? Parking meteors.
Dylan, you're weird.
Thank you very much, Haley.
It's showtime, folks. Apollo, here we come.
Stand by. Action.
The time was Christmas Eve, 1968. The Russians had already sent a spaceship around the moon. It carried flies, worms, and turtles, and they made it back alive. But NASA had just launched its second manned Apollo spaceship, Apollo 8. Here with more is our Apollo feature reporter, Haley.
Thanks, Cleo. It was really cool for NASA to schedule their first manned trip to the moon for the holiday season.
All right, you're all looking at yourselves as seen from 180,000 miles out in space. Less than 40 hours left to go to the moon.
Television was pretty far along, too, by then, and most of the whole world was watching the story on TV, as Apollo 8 actually flew behind the moon for the first time ever on Christmas Eve.
We'll see you on the other side.
When they were behind the moon, nobody back here at Mission Control could pick up their radio signal.
Apollo 8, Houston.
So NASA was pretty relieved when the astronauts got back in front of the moon again.
Apollo 8, Houston. Apollo 8, over.
We've got it. Apollo 8 now in lunar orbit. There's a cheer in this room. This is Apollo Control, Houston.
It was something. Astrodudes on the other side of the moon for the first time.
Please be informed there is a Santa Claus.
This is Haley reporting for WNDR-TV, the Astrodudes Network.
Now, I'm sure some of you Alpha Centaurians are waiting for the weather and sports, but we're just doing space, which is cool because the Apollo missions were the monster of all space flights. Isn't that right, Dr. Ba?
If I tell you, will you go away? The genius and I have work to do.
This is our last question, I promise.
Well, the problem with Apollo is this. You have to solve how to get from the spaceship down to the moon and back. Rachel?
Simple. Two machines with separate operating capability, independent steering and function. One modified with customer's lunar landing mechanism designed for a soft touchdown.
Smart kid, eh? You see, what we have here, this is the command module where the Astrodudes hang out most of the time. And here we have the lunar module, also known as the bug here. And they fit together like this here. They do it like... And this path here goes down to the moon and stays there. Except when they leave, this little piece here goes back to the ship. But somebody glued it down there. I can't get that thing off there. Where's Klaus?
Thank you, Dr. Ba. You can go back to sleep now.
Of course, Dr. Ba is right. The lunar module was the biggest advance made in the Apollo missions, and it was suggested by a NASA scientist named John Hobart. Everyone knew that if we were going to put a man on the moon, they had to get back to their spaceship, right? But Hobart figured out how to get back. It's important to have smart people on the ground, too. His idea was like using a landing boat from a big ship that would go down and then use a small rocket to get back up. After several more trial runs, NASA decided that Apollo 11 would be the first mission to try landing people on the moon. The whole world was watching as astronauts Michael Collins, Neil Armstrong, and Buzz Aldrin began their flight. Because they named their lunar module the Eagle, their mission was called the Flight of the Eagle.
Engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
At 9:32 a.m. on July 16, 1969, Apollo 11 roared into space on a colorful tail of flames generated by the Saturn V, the biggest rocket of them all.
11 Houston, thrusters go. All engines, you're looking good. Hi, Roger. You're loud and clear. Real fine.
Within 12 minutes of liftoff, they were in orbit 110 miles above the Earth. After inspecting the ship and setting their course, the crew reignited their third stage rocket and headed for the moon.
TMC looks good, flight. 25,553. H-dot is minus 4 balls 1.
Their target was an area of the moon called the Sea of Tranquility. 4 days after liftoff, they entered an orbit around the moon. They were supposed to get some sleep before going to the moon's surface the next day, but that was pretty tough.
Perigee plus 000.
It was kind of exciting and kind of scary and all very technical at the same time.
Roger, Eagle, dot.
After 10 circles around the moon, Armstrong and Aldrin climbed into the Eagle lander, turned on the engines, and began their flight down to the moon's surface.
Roger, how does it look? The Eagle has wings. Roger.
Everything was going fine, but things were a little weird for Michael Collins. He had to stay behind at the mother ship, which meant he was totally alone. Totally alone in orbit around the moon while his friends went to the surface. He wondered what would happen if they didn't make it back.
Capcom, we're go for landing.
Altitude 4200.
Houston, you're go for landing, over. Roger, understand, go for landing, 3,000 feet. You're looking great. How you doing, Control? We look good here, 5. Roger, how about you, Telcom? Go. Guidance, you happy? Go.
Then things got weird. The Eagle's computer began to overload. An alarm went off all the way back at Mission Control in Houston.
1201. Roger, 1201 alarm.
Everybody was afraid and nobody was real sure whether to stop the mission or keep going. Armstrong and Aldrin watched the surface of the moon get closer and closer. There was no time to lose. That's when a 27-year-old computer specialist named Stephen Bales came to the rescue. He was scared too, but he knew a lot about computers, so he made a decision for Mission Control.
We're go, flight. Okay, we're go. We're go, same type, we're go.
He told them to keep going, and it worked.
Okay, 75 feet. Guys looking good, down a half. 6 forward. Lights on. Forward. Forward. 40 feet, down 2.5.
With less than 30 seconds of fuel remaining, Armstrong and Aldrin landed the Eagle on the moon at 4:17 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on July 20th, 1969.
Okay, engine stop. We copy you down, Eagle. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
And we're getting a picture on the TV.
You got a good picture, huh?
They were real curious and couldn't wait to get outside, but they still had to put on their spacesuits and stuff, so it took a while.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Then, 6 hours later, they took their first steps down the ladder and onto the moon's surface.
Yeah, I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
As hundreds of millions of people watched it live on TV, Mission Commander Neil Armstrong became the first human to walk on the moon.
Beautiful view. Isn't that something? Magnificent sight out here.
A few minutes later, Aldrin joined Armstrong. They did a bunch of experiments on the moon. Then, after about 2.5 hours, they prepared to take off to rejoin Michael Collins and the mothership. The Eagle had to leave the surface on its own, and there was no way to rescue it if it failed.
Beautiful. Very smooth. Very quiet ride. There's that one crater on there.
Collins wasn't sure exactly where to look for them, but then he saw their blinking light as the Eagle left the crater fields below and flew back. Pretty soon they docked their ships and breathed a big sigh of relief. President Kennedy had been right. Humans really had made it to the moon by 1970. Whew, one incredible mission.
And there are 6 more Apollo missions to go, with a lot of scientific experiments to be done.
Okay, Jimmy, let's go to work.
A lot of work was done studying the moon's rocks and minerals.
This is really a rock and rollin' ride, isn't it?
And they had some great toys up there too, especially the rover, which was a great way to get around on the surface. Plus, they placed other equipment up there to help us keep studying after they got back to Houston.
Okay, let's go on back.
And now here's Newton, our factomaniac and trivia specialist, with a few final thoughts. Newton?
Did you know that astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin brought home 46 pounds of moon rock from their first flight to the moon? And did you know that most of the rocks help prove that the moon is about the same age as the Earth, 4.6 billion years old? Back to you, Cleo.
You know, Hawk, I'd like to make a personal observation.
Could anyone stop you, Cleo?
Well, you know how much I love space.
Yeah?
And you know how much I like science?
Yeah, not as much as gymnastics, but I know you like it. So what's your point?
Well, I just think it was incredible. I mean, humans have been around for hundreds of thousands of years. But then in just 10 years, the Americans and the Russians both made it not just into orbit, but all the way to the moon. I mean, just think where we can go in the next century. And there's so much out there with the Voyager and the shuttle and everything. And the contributions the whole world can make now. There's the European space program, India, Brazil, the Chinese, the Japanese, Koreans, Canadians. It's really just a matter of time.
Let's not get carried away. For all we know, our audience, the Alpha Centaurians, they could be zipping around the Milky Way on laser beams or thought waves.
That's just it. I hope they are. But if we don't try, we won't ever get there too. And I'm for trying. Exploring is so exciting.
That's cool.
And there you have it. We'll see you next time when we cover unmanned space flights like Voyager and Magellan. Good night. That is, assuming you have night.
Cut! We're off the air.
Yes! Astrodudes!
You are wonderful. With my brains and your electronics, we could send some kind of signal.
So why is being an astronaut such a strange job?
You told us that one already.
And you loved it. But wait, here's one that you're gonna really like.
Are you sure we're gonna really like it?
Absolutely.
Okay, we're listening.
What kind of pills do astronauts take?
I know.
You do?
Flintstone vitamins.
Not.
Okay, we give up. What kind of pills do astronauts take?
Space capsules! I got 1,000,000 of them! What happens when you cross a moon rock with an asteroid? Wait, I got a better one! What happened to the 2 Martians who visited California? They became Astrodudes! What do you mean that's not funny? That's hysterical! I got 1,000,000 of them!
Good afternoon, and welcome to WNTRT, the Astrodudes. You might have heard by the arrangement of slurs. Luis Erickson, Columbus, Spanish, and Portuguese.